Hey, welcome back, guys, to another episode of Delivery Day. We have a pretty cool episode for this today's show. I think hopefully will be super useful. We've got a ton of information to pack in, so hopefully we don't talk forever because that could be a that could be a problem. But we have install tips and tricks. Now, that may seem like it's not going to take too long, but we've been around for long enough to collect quite a bit of information, and hopefully we're going to get as much of it into this episode as possible and out to you guys so that when you go to install your software, whatever that may be, you'll have all the information that you need, or at least know where to go look.
True. Yeah, I recently asked many members of the SolidWorks Champions program which version of SolidWorks that they're using, and many of you are using. And I heard all sorts of answers. 2023 FD01, 2024 FD05, some 2025s in there, of course. So within this episode, as you mentioned, Jesse, really the focus is going to be 2025 and 2026, because we know that this time of year, right after the summer, a lot of you are looking to upgrade your SolidWorks. And so we thought, hey, that's the delivery of SolidWorks. This is Delivery Day, where if you're unfamiliar with the show, typically what we're doing on this podcast set is we are showcasing the sort of latest and greatest enhancements from the last 8 to 10 weeks or so. If you don't know, we have moved to a new model of releasing enhancements. Once again, every 8 to 10 weeks, we're releasing a new functional delivery box full of new enhancements and new features for you guys. So if you have not seen Delivery Day before, all those episodes are available on YouTube and Spotify today. But yeah, let's get into it. So Jesse, I guess first let's start off with who is this episode for and why did we create it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, I guess the episode would be for anybody, really.
Yeah, you're talking CAD admins, solo designer, really anyone, right?
Yeah, right. And of course, we're going to cover a handful of different topics that may be applicable to you in different spots, right? But essentially, everybody needs to get the software onto their computer one way or another, right? Either you are installing it yourself or somebody's installing it for you. Either way, this information will be good for you to take in or to get that to them if they're not watching along already. Because, obviously we've all just installed software and you just install it, hit all yes, and you're good to go, right? Well, there could be some other things that you might want to know that will make things go more smoothly or save you some time in the end, or hopefully prevent you from deleting data that you didn't intend to delete, which would be worst case scenario. So yeah, it is really for anybody. Obviously, different parts of the episode will apply to you in different scenarios, I think.
Yeah, so we're going to get through a lot of it. So you might think, right into installing SolidWorks. Well, no, actually, that's right in the middle, and we have chapterized this. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can skip ahead or rewind to a chapter that you may have missed. But no, we're actually going to go through from the foundational levels. We're going to talk system requirements, what you want to do before you look to install, your pre-installation checklist. Of course, installation tips and how-tos, we'll cover those. After you install, after you upgrade, whatever it is you're doing, what do you do then? What are our recommendations?
Yep.
And then some follow-up resources. And in between each of these sections, we have deliveries, right, of enhancements from the 2025 release, because that's what we do here typically on Delivery Day. We're not going to disappoint you there.
We couldn't help ourselves. We had to put in some functionality.
Yes, we have to. So we want to entice you for sure to upgrade to the latest and greatest here. So let's get into a bit of a distinction here. So we have these key distinctions of named user versus serial number. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Jesse?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is sort of a recent development, I guess I'll say. It's not that recent in terms of software terms, but yeah, it's good to know which way is going to apply to you, because there's a couple different flavors of SolidWorks that you could be using at this point, and it's helpful to know that we'll be covering both and to be kind of paying attention to that, because one might apply to you and one might not, right? So you can get SolidWorks in a couple different flavors. What that means for this episode, for installing, is that you might be getting your licensing a certain way, and you also might be getting your install media a certain way. So we've kind of differentiated these for the purposes of this episode by named user and by serial number. The second one, the serial number, is the one that you've been familiar with for a long time, right? That's the way that you've always purchased SolidWorks in the past, is that you buy the software. SolidWorks will send you a serial number, you take that serial number, and then you put it in. And of course, that means you're in charge of managing that serial number and all of your licensing and all of that. And we'll go through what the install process looks like for that, but that's what we'll be referring to when we're talking about a serial number style of activation. Named user, on the other hand, would be exactly as it sounds, right? You are the user of that software. You have named credentials that you're logging in and then getting all of your access through that, and that's being managed on the back-end system. Now, just to connect dots, of course, the serial number system, that is your regular SOLIDWORKS desktop, right? That you have always been able to purchase in the past. The named user system, that would be like SOLIDWORKS Connected. So just to connect those dots at the beginning, we'll be kind of using those terminologies as we go through, because like I said, it does affect how you're licensing and how you're getting your install media.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. So we are moving now into the pre-install checklist and tips that we recommend looking at here. And that will include system requirements. But before we do that, let's get to our first new enhancement to really whet your appetite when it comes to upgrading to SOLIDWORKS 2025. So, Jesse, what do we have here?
Yeah, sure. Well, in SOLIDWORKS 2025, you can now chat with teammates without leaving your model, share notes and project updates in real time, and even drop feedback directly on 3D annotations. As of today, you can now use other chat apps for the things that they are best at: memes, GIFs, fantasy football news. Sean, I know you wrote this, and all of the stuff that you won't say out loud.
Did you enjoy reading that for us?
I did.
So yeah, this is great. The reason why, of course, I wrote this, and I'm glad you read that one. When we talk about named user versus serial number, really the biggest distinction is how it is licensed.
Yes.
Right. So a lot of you for years have been asking for named user licensing to be able to control it, centralized from an admin point of view, and the 3D Experience platform does that for you. We saw in that little vignette, you basically just drag and drop the licenses onto a user. You can see who has what. Very easily, very centralized, and they don't have to know about serial numbers. You don't have to track them down and keep them in an Excel sheet. You don't have to worry about it. It doesn't really matter, though. When it comes to functionality, you'll see parity, right? So you see this sort of 3D swim area. Really, it's just a chat in between colleagues on different changes that need to be made, and even 3D annotations. There's a lot of power here, but the big thing is in 2025, as of that first release, that general availability release of 2025, you could then chat with your colleagues right inside of SOLIDWORKS.
Yeah, and it's like you said in the solid spot that I just read there. It's nice to have a dedicated design space to do that chatting in too. And obviously, it's got built-in functionality. All of the systems that we've built are specific to CAD, which really most of the other ones aren't. So you have to kind of work around those, where that was the intention from the get-go with these tools, which adds quite a bit of benefit.
Yeah, and I still talk to you on Google Chat, WhatsApp.
Every day.
I just probably don't talk to you about design stuff.
Right.
Keep all that in that little folder, that little area.
Yep.
All right, so let's move into the system requirements portion. And this is a really important portion. We've kind of done these particularly chronologically when it comes to installing. I always recommend, I think you do as well, that you look at the system requirements, particularly the software level requirements for both client and server area operating systems, as well as things like Office before you go to install, right?
Yeah, there are some things that you might not think about. Of course, the software side. Also, on the hardware side, probably the most important thing to check would be your graphics card
and a driver.
And drivers.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's always a good thing to check as well. But yeah, a good scan through this would really not hurt you before you go installing, just to make sure that there isn't something in there that catches you by surprise and not mid-install.
Yeah, and the real reason why we point you to this website particularly, and we'll talk about some particulars in terms of end of life for 2025 and 2026, the topic of this video, because we have that information at our disposal. Yeah. You might be watching this video in the future. 2027 might be out, might have just came out, and so the things that we're talking about now, and even the B-roll you see on the screen, is probably a little bit outdated and probably not very useful to you if you're downloading and installing 2027, or maybe there was a change, right? So definitely recommend going to solidworks.com on the system requirements page. You can see there's a nice tabular layout for basically everything that you would need to know, including start of support dates, end of support dates, and so on. But let's talk about the end of life news here. So the biggest one, I would say, and you might agree, you might disagree, is Windows 10. Windows 10, I know many of us have used for years. It's kind of weird. It always is when a given operating system that gained mass adoption goes into that sort of end of life state. But yeah, as of 2025, FTO3, we will not be supporting Windows 10, which is, maybe news to some of you. A lot of times, the reason why this happens, just to give you some background, is because naturally Microsoft will end support for a given operating system, right? So it happened to XP, right? We remember that happened to Vista. It feels like forever ago, but every operating system eventually hits that point, and Windows 10 is at that point pretty much.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that Windows 10 is already even in risk of that. But Windows 10 has been floating around in the news with some maybe a little bit of controversy that it's already at that point. But Windows 10, definitely good to know that. And again, I think that's coming from the Windows side at this point from Microsoft.
So it's always, once again, the conversation with customers, typically we're having a start of life, end of life dates. So you always obviously want to make sure you're within range there. So once again, check out the system requirements page for the most up-to-date details. But hopefully this information here is helpful. So in SOLIDWORKS 2025, variable radius fillets just got way smoother. No more sharp jumps or awkward geometry. Fillets now transition more gradually between radii, so your designs look cleaner and more realistic. Perfect for industrial design, consumer products, or really anything that demands a polished surface. Because it's a question that no one wants to ask themselves. Mm-hmm. Are your models looking ugly? I don't want to ask myself that question.
No.
This one was a hit, I would say. So back, and this was in the first release of 2025. I remember I went into the SOLIDWORKS Champions call and the user group leaders call, and I debuted this enhancement. And it's a simple checkbox. It just more gradually kind of smooths out the fillets. But it was a huge hit. Like, people were like, "Whoa, that's like magic," and that's what you always want to hear when you're working in software. It's like magic. Yeah,
I mean, that is a stark difference when you look at the before and after of that. That does a tremendous job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so this one was a really, really big one. And it looks great on this Proteus model.
It does.
So there's tons of edges that go all the way around the part, and it really smooths it out.
You mentioned this was on the Proteus. It may be worth mentioning that people may think a lot of times that these examples are tailor-made to make the feature look good, mm-hmm. right? That we would come up with a specific example that is just perfect for this, which isn't true, right? Mm-hmm. These are partner files that we use to make the what's new, and we just find a use case within those models, and that's just how well the tool works.
Yeah, we're doing that right now with Premiere.
We sure are.
Right?
We sure are. We can say that now.
Yeah, we can say that now. It's nice to be able to say that.
It is. Yep.
So awesome. But once again, we'll keep dropping these throughout the episode. Hope you're enjoying it. Okay, so we're now in the portion of the episode where we're going through that pre-installation checklist. Of course, system requirements is part of that. You want to be able to check your system requirements and make sure that your server and client-side operating systems, as well as the associated softwares like Office, are within range, right? Yeah. They're after start of life, but before end of life. So let's talk a little bit about these backup locations, Jesse.
Yeah, sure. So we've got a list here of just kind of the heavy hitters. Obviously, you want to take a couple moments to kind of think through your setup. Anything that you have customized or your company might have customized, it's good to take kind of a mental inventory of that. And sometimes I will even make an actual list of that, and just keep it in my Google Drive or something, or, things that I have customized. But we've outlined a couple of these that are maybe common ones that people might make adjustments to. And so you can certainly go through this list, but don't take this as the gospel list of things that you should check. Try to take that mental inventory of things that you've customized or that you're using that you've customized on a day-to-day basis, because those are all the things you're going to want to have backed up. But your toolbox and libraries, that's really the obvious one, right? A lot of work can go into customizing a toolbox for a company, so you certainly don't want to be losing that data or having to recreate it if you've got it tweaked just the way you like it. So that's a good one, and probably the first one. I would say it's appropriately first on this list of things to talk about.
And I would say, like, to that point with toolbox and with several of these, actually, I mean, really what it comes down to is you're basically just copying and pasting. That's one way. Of course, there are other backup processes that you might have to automate things. But if you just copy that entire directory, So if you go to your options and toolbox hole wizard within SOLIDWORKS, you'll see where that directory is. Just make sure you copy that. If you've made, like you said, any customizations to properties or sizes within a toolbox directory, it's a good idea to do that before you upgrade.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like in the case of Toolbox, you have actual data in a folder that you can just swipe that whole folder and copy it to somewhere. Some of the other ones we might be able to copy from within the software, and we'll get to those too. But yeah, if there's any data that's locally on your machine or on a network drive, always a good idea to be backing that up regularly anyway. But before you go install a new version, definitely a good time to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I'm chuckling is because, and this happens, the final area on this slide talks about backing up your SOLIDWORKS projects, and hopefully this is not the first time you've thought to do that. But if it is, please put a process into place. If you're using PDM, there is a process to have those archives backed up. If you're using 3D Experience, that's kind of the point. It just kind of maintains your revisions and reversions for you. Yeah. But if you're not using that, that's fine if you don't need to. Just make sure that you are backing up your own IP, your own files. At this time, it's a good reminder to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And if you haven't done that, like Sean said, pause us. We won't be offended. Pause us right now.
Yeah, that's your priority number one.
Go do that. Come back.
It's one of those things. The best time to do it was X years ago, whenever, but the second best time is right now.
Yep.
All right. So let's get into, Jesse, some FAQs that we are asked pretty commonly by customers when it comes to upgrading our SOLIDWORKS software. Mm-hmm. We know some of us have, on the server side, we might have a PDM server service that we have to upgrade. Or maybe we have a license manager that we have to upgrade. So what do we go with first? Do we have to upgrade the server software first or client software in each of these cases? Once again, a question we get quite a bit.
It is, yeah, and just to take a bump back real quick. So obviously this is would be a case where you have serial numbers, but those serial number of activations are being handled by a network, right? So you've got network licenses. So your client machine is connecting to your local network server to get your licensing information. So my recommendation anyway, would be to do the server first.
Yes.
Your server can go back a couple of releases where if you upgrade your client first and then try to connect it to an old server, that's not going to work, right? Your server is not going to recognize it. So I would always say go ahead and do the server first. It's usually a simpler process anyway. It's just got the manager running, like you said. Go ahead and update that first, because that can go backwards where you can't go the other way around. So if you don't want to find yourself in a spot where you're suddenly down for some amount of time before you can get to the server and get that done, especially if you don't have quick access to the server, make sure that's done first, and then you can go back and do your clients.
Yeah, it's a great point. So really, if you're listening, this really only applies, or for most of you, it would only apply if you're using the SOLIDWORKS Network License Manager or if you're using SOLIDWORKS PDM. If you're not, the default answer is client, because you're only worried about the client.
Right.
But enough of you have one or both of those to where this is a question that comes up quite a bit.
Yep.
Another FAQ that I thought we'd address is which is best? Upgrading in place, where basically let's assume we have SOLIDWORKS, let's say 2024 on our machines, and we're now upgrading to 2025. Do we just upgrade on top of it? Or do we start fresh, whereby we would, in this instance, maybe uninstall fully the 2024 version and then freshly install on that same machine 2025. So we have some pros and cons of both here. So maybe we can kind of talk through.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say this one is more of a loaded question than the previous. The previous question is a bit more cut and dry. This one could have pros and cons, which we've kind of outlined here.
It totally does. So let's first. So we'll go through pros and cons of both. So let's first go through upgrading in place. First of all, and then again, once that's basically if you do not do an uninstall step, you already have a previous version of SOLIDWORKS installed, and you're just upgrading on top of it. So it is faster because you're doing one less thing.
Yep.
You are, and this scales, of course, if you have a multi-user environment, it's multiple PCs. So faster and easier. Yeah, potentially for sure. Less disruption. You're not saying, hey, can I uninstall SOLIDWORKS on all of your PCs or just my PC? Let's say that takes, 10, 15 minutes or whatever, and then have to do a full install process on top of that. So that's one pro.
Less time just downloading.
Less time
just
downloading, less files.
Yep.
Preserve settings automatically. So if you're really keen on, and we'll talk about this at length as we go, but if you're really keen on keeping your file paths for your document templates exactly as is, and your toolbar customizations exactly as is. If that's really important to you and it causes you crazy anxiety to want to change it, this might be a route that you want to consider.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're reaching parity between named user and serial number kind of as we speak with this one. But particularly with serial numbers today, and maybe by the time you watch this, we'll have full parity on this, installing multiple versions, major versions like 2024 and 2025 on the same PC existing side by side. So if that's something that you need to do, that can be okay. But I would add on delivery day, actually the last episode, I believe, we did a feature flashback.
We did.
To a feature that you guys might not have seen yet, which is to be able to save as a previous release. So now it's almost like there's less reason to have two different versions.
Yep, I was going to say the exact same thing. It can certainly be helpful in certain situations to have both. But now with the back save, you've got at least 2 years of wiggle room that you can save back and get yourself out of the jam that most people had multiple versions installed for.
So let's look at the cons here. So the cons of upgrading in place, which is to say you're not uninstalling, you're just installing on top of a previous version, is, as we say here, residual settings of files that might conflict. Mm-hmm. So we have a QA team, a very robust QA team, and we they look at different ways that SOLIDWORKS can be upgraded. But as you guys know, there's so many different potential ways or upgrade paths that one might have. You might be upgrading for like 2023 to 2026. Maybe in between you upgraded to 2024 on one PC, and then another PC that's entirely different, and then that one had different customizations.
Yeah.
So that you can start to see as you think through this that can cause little itty bitty issues.
Yeah, I guess the pro is that you get to keep your customizations. The con is that you get to keep your customizations.
Right.
So
right.
If you've got it all messed up, then maybe you don't want to keep those.
Yeah, and if you do run into those sorts of issues, you can always call, and we'll talk about this again later. You can always call your value-added reseller for technical support. Just call them and say like, hey, this is happening, or look in the knowledge base, which is an asset we'll talk about a bit later. Toolbox or PDM issues. This is one thing where let's use the toolbox example, and we'll show this later when we get into the installing SOLIDWORKS example. But if you have an existing toolbox like we mentioned earlier, you will want to make sure that the installer is set to upgrade that toolbox, of course, after you bat it up, hopefully. But if you forget to do that, or if you don't change the radio button selection during the install, it might cause a bit of confusion. You can fix it, but it's just one of those things where, hey, that's something to be aware of.
Yeah, get a duplicate.
Yeah. So these are some of the cons. Let's get into uninstalling first. So basically, you uninstall the previous major version if you have a previous major version of SOLIDWORKS installed on a PC, and then you install the new version, whether that's 2025 or 2026 in these instances. So the first pro.
Clean slate.
Yeah, clean slate.
Yeah, that is nice. I'm leaning more and more towards this as a pro lately. I think you and I were talking about this the other day. Even with customizations, I have a tendency to just wipe out my customizations because it's gotten so easy to customize SOLIDWORKS. I have a tendency. It's like losing all of your tabs on a browser. It's like, okay, well, if I don't remember what it was, then I don't need it, right? So I kind of like having a reset where I can just. It takes seconds to re-customize things as I go, as far as interface customizations anyway, that I have a tendency to just kind of start fresh, and then I'll just add them back as I need them, knowing that, okay, these are the ones that I'm actually using as I'm using the software, and it takes 2 seconds to do that. So I kind of like having the clean wipe from time to time at least.
I would say these next two, better for troubleshooting and improves consistency, kind of go hand in hand in a way, particularly, and, there's like anything, if you have more of something, it's obviously scaling. So if you have more PCs, like more designers who are using SOLIDWORKS in a given environment, and let's say you're the CAD admin or you're just an IT, and you're having to manage over, and that's why you're watching this, and you're having to manage over a SOLIDWORKS install. If you have someone who's made X number of customizations and has had 3 versions versus someone who just started, working at your company and maybe has a fresh PC and they're installing for the first time, they may have different installation experiences potentially, right? Because that machine's been through much more than the other one. So starting clean, I think both of us probably agree. Like I prefer that approach, but there are efficiencies in the other approach. So it's really just what do you value more?
Yeah, certainly. And I think we've talked to it in both cases, but when you're talking about improved consistency, maybe a cautionary tale. I have seen customers who end up pushing customizations back that are very old. They carry over from version to version to version to version and don't go back to check those out. And then they end up pushing settings that are turning things off that are new in the software that are advantageous. And so it is a good, if you are using this to get a clean slate and then pushing settings back that are outdated settings, it is always a good idea to check out your customizations on a regular basis. In this case, I would say as you're installing, that's a perfect time to do that, and just see if they're still relevant. If you're trying to customize things across the board with a bunch of machines, make sure that the changes that you're making are for the better.
Sure. And then cons, I think by this point we've probably talked about a lot of these in some way. It's more time consuming, of course, if you're doing the uninstall and then you're installing. Increased risk of user error, mainly by this. One of the big things is if you miss doing backups, though, if we kind of talked about this, that's very important for the items that you care to back up. And it requires planning. So once again, you have to have that sort of extra step, do your backups. But once again, I would advocate that you should be doing these sorts of things anyway. But once again, if you can get to that point where you are organized, you have your backups, a lot of these sorts of things don't take very long to set back up. And I just prefer it that way.
I do too. Honestly. And it is nice to carry things over, but there is also something to be said for gaining some familiarity with where all of your stuff is in the software too, right? Being comfortable with going into tools options and seeing where your things are linked to, just so you have some idea, in case something does go wrong, you can fix it quick.
Yeah.
Rather than kind of, throwing up the white flag and saying, well, I don't know what happened here. If you're used to using those systems and knowing where to look for things, that will always be helpful.
Yeah, and we'll look at some of those examples in the sort of post-upgrade steps in the later section here.
Yep.
So let's go through a sample uninstall process. So I took this down from my PC here, whereby I might be looking to uninstall SOLIDWORKS on a given PC. Now, many of us have been in the Add Remove Programs area, Programs and Features. That isn't new. Really, what I want to call your attention to is right here within the Advanced Options. So you have a few options here. You can have the uninstall or remove registry entries, data files and folders, as well as some download files and folders there. The biggest one I want to call your attention to is the data files and folders and this box right here that I'm spotlighting. Because you might think, oh, I just want to get rid of everything. Just get rid of it all. Just take inventory of what it's actually getting rid of before you click to go, basically, to get it off your machine. It's particularly with Toolbox, because that particular checkbox, data files and folders, will just get rid of Toolbox.
Yeah, and I have seen people saving their actual design data into install locations before and losing it. So obviously it goes without saying, know where you're saving your data to, and make sure it's not going somewhere where these are. But at least taking a scroll through and making sure that you know what it is deleting and you're comfortable with deleting those. And that goes for the registry too. We called out the files, but your registry is going to remove things. You might have it remove your serial numbers if you don't know how to quickly access those serial numbers, right? If you're on a serial number system, you're in charge of managing all of that yourself. So I just did that a couple days ago. I was like, okay, where did I put my serial numbers? Okay, there they are, when installing desktop. So you do have to know that you'll need to get back to those in this case if you're cleaning all of that stuff out of there.
Yeah, and it is one of those points where I also want to call out, once again, if you find yourself in a bit of a bind there, you can always call your valued reseller, check in with them. They practically know everything, so they can kind of get you out of a bind in that way. And the uninstaller will ask you if it notices that you do have and you probably have an activation on that PC, if you want to keep the activation or if you want to deactivate it in the process of uninstalling.
Yeah. So what's your preference there?
Well, I guess if I'm doing this for the purpose of going to a new version, I'll probably just leave it there. It's going to try to activate when I install the new version anyway, or when any of us do. So I will typically just leave it there. Do you try to deactivate before?
I deactivate it and reactivate it, but for not any particular reason. It's really just a safety thing.
Yeah. If you're removing PCs though, it's worth mentioning, deactivate.
Or if you're changing any hardware.
Or changing hardware, that's a great point.
Yeah, because that is based on the hardware that you have. So if you're going to be, mucking with the system at all while that's gone, definitely just be safe.
Yeah, just let it deactivate for you. It's not a huge deal, but once again, and if you get into a bind, you can always call your valued reseller. They'll help you out. It'll be fine. So we also wanted to call out, this is a great resource, these solid practice guides on MySOLIDWORKS or my.solidworks.com. Either one will get you there, but you'll see here we're calling out the Managing SOLIDWORKS Upgrades Guide, which is a very extensive PDF. Today we're primarily going through SOLIDWORKS upgrades, but there are other areas of SOLIDWORKS as well. Like what if you're using SOLIDWORKS Electrical, or you need more extensive insights into upgrading, say, SOLIDWORKS PDM. This is a tremendous guide to go to.
Yeah, a lot of care goes into making these, and they're definitely worth taking a scan through.
All right, Jesse, let's get to one of your favorite enhancements of 2025.
Yeah, Sean. So the good news is in SOLIDWORKS 2025, it has your back with dangling dimension repair. Just go into your display, delete relations dialog, select repair all dangling. It's like wiping mustard off your mustache. Right, Sean?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself.
I'm sure you couldn't have.
Yeah, just like wiping mustard off of my mustache. In recent releases, we've really upped the ante in terms of these instant fix buttons.
Yeah.
You know, we had the broken mates, auto repair mates. Yeah, that's a huge one.
Yep.
Which I believe leverages AI to be able to approximate some areas there. But repair all dangling, I mean, when I was teaching SOLIDWORKS, let's say, I don't know, 7-10 years ago, it's not necessarily something that I thought would ever be in the software. It's just like,
neither.
How would it know? Like, isn't it so strictly like looking at these edge IDs?
Yeah.
Like, it's something that you would know as someone who designed it or someone who works at a company with certain parts. Like, yeah, it's actually supposed to be hooked here, the end of a dimension or whatever. But yeah, it's a pretty useful button without having to just like throw everything away.
Yeah, totally. I love these tools that are no cost, right? It doesn't cost you anything to do one click. It could potentially save you a ton of time. So it's definitely worth being aware that those options are there, because if it saves you any amount of time, that was well worth the click.
Yeah. All right, so the section that you've all been waiting for, hopefully you found a lot of what we went through before very valuable. I think it's integral to a successful installation or upgrade myself. But installing SOLIDWORKS. So the one thing we wanted to mention is, way back when in the beginning of the episode, we talked about these key distinctions. We both did, right, between serial number based installs and named user environment installs. So really, as you can see, it's just a matter, mostly, if I were to surmise, it's mostly a matter of just going to different websites to be able to install. Now, there's different features, of course. In a named user environment, it has its benefits, which we've already talked about. Serial number environment has its benefits, which we've already talked about. It's just a matter, once again, just going to different places to kick off your install. So let's start off with the serial number based install. So to get installation media, you have to go to solidworks.com. It'll ask you to log in. You just go up to support, and then you go down to recent releases. And then from there, you can get to the download link under the resources tab. One thing we call out here is that this is not just to get the latest version. You can actually go multiple versions back. So really what you're getting here is the installer. And then from there, the installer, once you launch it, will ask you, hey, what do you want to do? So once again, that can get you 2026, 2025, even back to 2024, and at current, even 2023.
Yep. Yeah, so this is kind of manual mode, right? You're manually downloading the installation manager, downloading the files through that, putting in your serial number that's got your license key.
Exactly. So once you have that setup doc, you want to run this setup.exe as administrator. We usually recommend doing that. So work with your IT team if you have any kind of guardrails there. And I want to kind of pause here on this first screen, which is a 4-option screen. Number 1 is install on this computer. Number 2, create an admin image, which we really haven't talked too much about in the scope of this episode.
Yeah.
And then number 3 is the ability to install server components. That would be like your license manager, PDM server, server software. And then the 4th one is download and share all files. So number 1, what it will do, and we'll see this in just a moment, basically it'll install all the files needed based on your entitlements via your serial number. The second one, we'll talk about admin images in just a moment, so we'll save that one for a bit later. And then, 3, install server components. We talked about that. Download and share all files, I wanted to give a special spotlight here. I typically, with new major versions, will select to download and share all files. Now, this is personal preference. You don't have to do that. I just like it because I know if I have to uninstall at any time and then reinstall, that I have like a fresh batch of files that I can use. And then also if I have colleagues that need to download, I'm not doing like 8 or 9 different download operations per employee or per design team member. I'm basically just getting one big set of files, and I'm saying, okay, everyone copy this down locally and, for efficiency, and then install from there.
Yeah, that is a nice way to do it. Yeah, and again, this kind of being manual mode, the one installation manager will get you the ability to do whatever it is you need to do with the software, basically.
Okay, so if you're choosing install on this computer, it'll obviously ask you for your serial number. Go ahead, try it. Try SSSWWW. It won't work. So it'll auto-select your products based on what it perceives your entitlements to be.
Mm-hmm.
This is a bit of a pro tip, right? I know you and I both do this. We'll change the path to the year, so it's a little bit easier as you're kind of navigating through a given system. And we'll do the same thing with the toolbox, right?
Yep.
Just keeps
I do this
tidier.
every single time I install with this method. It really just does help, especially if you're using side by side.
One thing I will mention in terms of the entitlements, it's going to try to install as much as it sees you to be entitled to based on your serial number. But there are some times when I don't necessarily want all the software there. Not to pick on Composer Player, but maybe Composer Player is not something you might not know what it is, and you might not want it on your PC. And we all know many of us, I'll basically fill my hard drive as much as I can. So you can give me a 2 terabyte hard drive. I'm going to fill it eventually. So even though our personal hard drives are probably larger than they've ever been for a lot of our PCs, you might want to be economical.
I'm constantly on the edge of my C drive being full. You and I, we have so many different softwares that we use. Just with the softwares that I have installed, it's always right there.
Yeah, 100%. So you can always uncheck them, and then you can always edit the install through that same programs and features area if you want to re-add something later. So it's not such a huge deal.
Yeah, and I will customize that myself basically every time as well. Don't go crazy though. Don't go taking everything out. You might want to leave file utilities and things like that in place.
Sure. All right, so now moving on to the named user style of installation. Once again, essentially you're just going to a different website to get the installer. The installer looks a little bit different, but you're kind of doing the same things. After all, you are installing SOLIDWORKS in either case. So here we're in the Welcome app, and we click Install to kick off the installer. It'll ask us what our preferred paths are. It'll ask us if we have any extra serial numbers, say for SOLIDWORKS MBD, which is a serial number only product at this point.
Yes.
So you can, doesn't really matter. You can install these other products even if you are installing in a named user environment.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and it should be mentioned, one of the things that I like about this is you're not necessarily going to another website, right? This is just in this case, we're showing it in a separate spot, but you can get this right in your normal working area of the platform, right? You can just launch the software where you would be launching any of your other apps and download right from there, which is one of the things that I like about this method.
Yeah, and it maintains it for you, which is great and preferred in some cases. So let's talk about admin images. So here's an example where we're showing that second option to create an admin image and potentially to deploy it. What's the point of admin images?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Some people might not be familiar with that at all, but this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with pushing customizations. You can do that at a sort of a grand scale with an admin image, right? You can really tune things to exactly how you want if you're deploying to multiple client machines at once.
Yeah, and you can see you can group it by group at a company in terms of which products should be installed, which serial numbers they should be leveraging at which sites.
Yep.
So we've gotten pretty grand in terms of the scope of customization here. You can also deploy settings files if you want to have, like, let's say the same macros linked within the company. I've seen that a lot. Like a given company will have internally different macros they've developed.
Yep. And again, just to restate that, this is exactly what I was talking about. If you're pushing those customizations, this is a good time to validate those. Make sure they work in the new, especially with macros, right? You might have custom code. Make sure that works in the new version and that you're not pushing customizations that are going to be hampering people's use, not helping them. So this is a very good time to validate all of those before you go pushing it to the entire company.
This is a bit of a specialty style install.
Yes.
So you can go same area, my.solidworks.com. We have a full guide that kind of goes through all of this if this is of interest to you. Most of the time I have found that this is the case where you have multiple users. I don't know if I've ever seen someone deploying to themselves.
Yeah,
didn't have an image. No.
Yeah,
but
if you're just a CAD user, you're not going to be.
Yeah, if you have a lot of different entitlements kind of flying around in terms of product usage, this might be something to look into. Starting in SOLIDWORKS 2025, as of FD01, we have design iteration capability built right into the software. You can add comments on save and keep those messily appending file names out of your hair from now on.
I like it. We obviously we talked about this at fairly great length because we had this came up in 2 episodes, right? Because
this was in 2 episodes. Yeah,
we had a couple of different enhancements that were kind of parallel, so we hit this pretty completely. So if you haven't seen those, go back. FD01 and 2, I want to say, or was it 2 and 3?
I think it was 2 and 3.
Maybe 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Watch all of the episodes.
Yeah.
And then you'll find it.
A big takeaway, of course, is that we enhanced this over the course of a couple of months, like multiple times. So the first enhancement was just adding the ability to not only have full revision capabilities, but also versions or iterations underneath those revisions.
Yeah.
And then the second enhancement, which came out very shortly after in that same year, just once again, like 8, 10, 12 weeks later, was the ability to add comments to those iterations so that you knew more or less what they were for.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is kind of one of those things where it's sort of like a micro revision, right? I've got a couple of different design ideas and I want to store those without having to do a full revision and say this is a whole new version, but maybe I've got a couple different thoughts on this. And it's nice that you can even kind of like scroll through them and see them sort of side by side as you're kind of ratcheting through them, which is kind of cool. You can sort of play them back and sort of get a global view of a couple different ideas.
Yep. Yeah, I love this one.
Very cool.
So let's get into some post-upgrade tips. So we have some best practices and some examples, I think, stemming from some of the areas that we mentioned earlier. But a big area that we wanted to talk about, and this isn't necessarily something you have to do, but something that does have its performance benefits, is upgrading, namely kind of upsaving your SOLIDWORKS projects from a previous version to a new major version. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, it's something that you might kind of overlook because obviously you can open your older version files in your newer version of the software.
Sure.
So you might not necessarily think to go through and save all of your files into that new version, at least not immediately. That will probably happen over the span of you actually working with them, right? You're working with them and saving them, and eventually you'll get them all there. But it might be a good idea to do that in batch. For performance reasons, if nothing else. And there's a couple ways that you can do that. Obviously, the first bullet point here, as we've covered many times throughout this episode, test this out first.
Yeah.
Right. That is always a good idea. We're working in software, and as you said, we can only test so many scenarios. So many of the things that come across as things we need to address are customer specific, right? A very large portion of them. So that means that we can't find out about something until you try it. And that's just the nature of software. There's millions of iterations of things that, ways that things can go. So always testing things when you are getting a fresh setup, excellent idea. And one way that you can do that is to upgrade one machine, right? Before you go upgrading everybody, upgrade one machine, test some things out. Take a duplicate of all of your data and just start saving things in there. Just validate, right? Take a quick look through and make sure everything is loading the same way that it was. With a sample project, just duplicate your data, try a sandbox, and give that a try. Once you're comfortable that everything is looking the same, and it almost always is, right? But once you're comfortable that everything is the same, you might want to batch save all of those files up into the new version, have everything saved in the new and fresh version rather than getting them all trickling up. And you can do that with a variety of different ways. But the task scheduler is a really simple way to do that. I just did that fairly recently with the What's New project. I wanted to move all of the files that I had in one folder to a new version, just set up task scheduler, let them all run, and it will open and save those all in batch, and then you're good to go. Now, one thing to mention is there is an upgrade assistant as well in there. And if you do have both versions installed side by side, which especially if you're doing a test machine or a sandbox, would be a great way to do that, have them both installed in parallel. You can actually take a file and have it run in both versions of the software, and it will give you a little comparison and just make sure everything is good to go there. So the upgrade assistant is a nice way to get a sanity check and just make sure everything is performing the way that it should be from one version to the next, and give you a little bit more confidence when you go to then batch save everything up.
And that's an area within the installer when you do go to in the serial number kind of environment. When you do go to install a new version, it will identify if you have an old version still installed, and it'll ask you via radio button selection: do you want to install this side by side or do an upgrade? So it's a very simple radio button, but it's a big one to call out.
That's a great point. Yeah, I don't think we actually made that clear earlier in the episode as to how you would do that. But yeah, it will auto recognize that, hey, there's already SOLIDWORKS here. What are you trying to do with it?
Yeah. So in that case, as you just mentioned. If it is a test machine, to make sure that everything's on the up and up when you kind of upconvert a file there by saving it in a new version, that's a spot where you would, especially if you want to run this task, that's a spot where you'd probably want to have, at least in that one sort of isolated case, want to have like a side-by-side for the purpose of doing the upgrade and doing the, moreover, doing the cross comparison.
Yeah.
If you do have PDM, PDM as well as 3D Experience, they have their own file upgrade utilities. So once again, MySOLIDWORKS is a great resource to go into and look at that, as well as your value-added reseller if you have questions about that.
Yeah, and of course, there's always the old school, tried and true way of save all.
Open and save all. Yeah, open and save all.
Open the file.
Yeah, so essentially, I mean, you could open up an assembly or drawing that references an assembly and do file save all, and that will not only save the assembly, but also the kind of subcomponents as well, or sub-assemblies.
Yeah, rather than just what would be open in RAM at the time.
Exactly. One thing I do want to call out, though, in terms of saving these is that you are, in essence, when you open up an older version project into a newer version of SOLIDWORKS, SOLIDWORKS is kind of doing a little bit of conversion in the background to be able to make the file not only readable, but able to be manipulated and changed. So you will actually see a performance increase when you finally do that save. Because it's just something less for SOLIDWORKS to have to do when it opens it into that new version.
Yeah,
that's why people a lot of times, not just to see, like we've been, I feel like focusing a lot, and we should, on areas where it's like, is there a problem or is there some abnormality? But sometimes it's just good like file hygiene to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, like you said, that is the primary reason for doing this. Obviously, it's good to check and make sure, but rarely is there actually any particular issue. But yeah, the batch conversion of them, if you will, would be for performance reasons.
So let's look at, I know throughout we've talked about file locations in the midst of this episode, and we've talked about keeping or retaining certain files and upgrading files versus making new ones. And you made a few examples I thought we would show here. So the first one is actually file locations, right? So checking those out.
Yeah. So again, this is another case where it's good to know where these things are, right? System options, and you're about halfway down is your file locations. Now there's a drop down here that has all of the locations that store all of the things that SOLIDWORKS might be looking for. So if you hit that drop down, you'll see all of the stuff in there. You can scroll up and down and click on any one of those, and you can get to the file locations for that. But you can also do an edit all now, which is pretty
this was huge.
pretty amazing. So you can just get access to everything. You can find and replace things in there. So you can just get a quick scan of where all of your locations are pointing to. Make sure they're all going to the right locations, right? You can quickly look down through there and see, oh, nope, that's not going to the right place, and make sure that you've got everything pointed to the right locations. So that's typically what I do. Once I go to install, I'll just go edit all, take a quick scan through there, because sometimes, especially if you haven't done a full clean with your registry and taken everything out of there, you might end up with locations that are all over the place. Or if you're installing multiple on side by side in parallel, you might end up with some crosstalk where it's looking to old versions of those folders. So always a good idea to pop in there, just take a look, make sure you've got everything going to the right places and you're getting the correct versions of things that you are expecting. Much easier to do now with edit all than it was to go through that list. And before I would go through and maybe hit some of the heavy hitters, the things that you're using on a daily basis, and the rest hope for the best. And maybe you've got something to fix down the road, but now you can just do a quick scan of all of them and away you go.
Yeah, and if you want to prioritize, once again, you can kind of just go back to the earlier part of this episode.
Yes.
Look at that one slide, at one area, that list we had of potential backup locations,
Common
and
things to
prioritize.
check.
Yeah, just prioritize based on that.
And to be fair, the one that it lands on by default is the one that almost always people are going in to find, and that's your template locations.
Yep.
Right. Now, with the templates, sometimes you'll get something like this, right, where we've got some miscellaneous templates that were not what we were expecting, or it's pointing to the wrong location. one little trick that you can use is that SOLIDWORKS will actually recreate the templates for you. And we were just chatting about this in one of our group chats. We've been calling this the Charles trick, because one of our coworkers, Charles, he mentioned that in the chat. And it's a great tip, right? You just delete the location, remove it from the list. When you relaunch SOLIDWORKS, it will recreate your templates, and you've got a fresh set. Now, of course, this goes back to our conversation about backing things up. If you've got custom templates, that's not going to work for you, right? You're going to need to go grab your custom templates, find the right location. But if you do find yourself in a situation where you're just using the out-of-the-box templates, somehow you've got them pointed to the wrong locations and you can't figure out how to get them back, quick tip, delete it, and it will be recreated for you.
Yeah, and we put this in here, I think, for a couple of reasons. One reason is I know quite a lot of you, especially power users, will do this. Basically, they will start fresh with the new version templates and then customize what they need to.
Yes.
Main things, like you said, there's usually like 2 or 3 things. Units, for sure.
Yep.
Are you using inches or millimeters based on your part designs? And then a few other things, of course, maybe the background, those sorts of things, in making a template. But if you're really into just starting fresh and making clean file sets, this is a very quick way and easy way to have SOLIDWORKS just auto-generate them for you.
Yes. Yep.
So very cool. And this is pretty similar, this next tip, right? Kind of along the same lines.
It is, yeah. And this was just more of a reminder than anything. We've talked about install time is a good time to be going back and taking a look at all of your stuff, right? Just review everything you've got, and templates are no exception. I mentioned that, clearing out any customizations that you're pushing that may be outdated. Drawing templates are one of those things that almost never get reviewed, right? You find that you end up using the same drawing template for ages, and that may or may not be a good thing, right? So again, the point is just to review these things. But we've added tools over the years that will help you, clean these things up. So the example that we were looking at here is just using a quick automatic border, right? If you need to make some changes or make some custom templates or make some variations of your templates, and you want to do that in a quick manner, a lot of times just that border, you don't have to draw that in but manually anymore, right? People used to avoid doing that because it's like, it's just going to be too much work to fix it.
Yep.
I don't want to make a new one. But all of that stuff is, automated system at this point, and you can make quick changes to those. So it's worth taking a pass through and seeing if there's anything that needs to be cleaned up or, like you said, hygiene. It's a good time to do a little bit of hygiene.
So we've talked about settings. Right here, what we're showing is saving and restoring settings, right?
Yeah, save and restore settings. Now, I said earlier that I never use this anymore, but I will say this is a great time to back them up, even if you want to customize from scratch, because it never hurts to have them. It's a very small file. I will go back in here and back this up, and this will save anything that you have checked on in that list, right? I checked on save use and unchecked it again, just to say that you can choose out of that list what it is you want to have backed up. I always just use the whole list because it's a very small file. So there's really no reason not to do that. And then anything that I have customized will get caught. And you can read these back in. You can stick them on a thumb drive, stick them in your Google Drive or wherever. You can bring them back in and reset your whole system back to the way that you have everything customized. So I said I like to start from scratch from time to time and just re-customize things as I go. But if you've got a ton of stuff customized, that's exactly the way you like it, there's no reason not to just read it back in and keep going the way that you were going.
And these are pretty popular as well, like in multi-user environments. We've been using SOLIDWORKS for so long, and we know a lot of its ins and outs. But there are always cases, of course, where maybe someone that you've hired is more familiar with a different CAD package, or for whatever reason, they haven't really been digging in the SOLIDWORKS options. Like, there are a lot of programs where I'm like, I don't even know what's in the options of that program. If you're looking to have it just like a one-click sort of way to get those file locations back in, especially if you have like the same PC models like in between and you have a lot of ubiquity there, this could be a very easy way to just make sure that once again, like file locations, template locations, toolbox location, all that just gets like ported in right away for like a new user.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just that top option, that checkbox there. I'm always a fan of letting users customize their working methods themselves. I have seen companies try to override that and try to force customers to use it a certain way with certain shortcuts and things like that. I generally argue against that. because I find that SOLIDWORKS is so customizable. To be able to set things up to what's comfortable with you almost always makes you faster.
I would agree.
So I always argue for that. But things like system options, there might be some things that are very important to the way that your company functions with the software. So being able to just read those in quickly is a great argument for that.
So Jesse, speaking of toolbars and customizations, what do we have here?
Yeah, what a great transition. So this is the simplified interface mode in SOLIDWORKS 2025 FDO1. It's a cleaner, easier workspace built just for you. One tab, one focus. You get just the basics, basic modeling, drawing, or assembly tools, depending on what it is you're working on. And I used to get that question all the time.
Yeah, and it's interesting, we have the basic, when you mentioned basic assembly, basic part, and then, basic drawing tools. But we also have this other area, the command predictor, which I believe was new in 2025 GA, which will look at your actions and kind of where you are in the progress of your model, your assembly, your drawing, and then give you different actions that you might be looking to take, even if, once again, you're unfamiliar with where to find things or unfamiliar with the commands that might be relevant. Given where you are, once again, in the progress of making what you're making. So these two tabs can definitely get you started. I would say, especially for, I'd say if you're a long tenured SOLIDWORKS user and you're using a lot of solid modeling features within the modeling environment, the part modeling environment, this could be a good one to try. Of course, there's always like doing things like the S key to kind of find different actions and stuff. But I would say give it a shot. You can always switch back. But if you're a new user, you've never used SOLIDWORKS before, this might be a great way to get someone up and running a lot faster.
Yeah, definitely. I'm imagining if I was still teaching essentials, I would probably start out here and kind of roll into the full. I have a tendency of learning softwares that are notorious for having crazy learning curves, and that is generally because there's stuff all over the place in the interface of the softwares that I tend to pick up. I have not generally found SOLIDWORKS to be that way. I mean, certainly since the era that we're in, since 2008 or 9 or whatever, where we have the command manager, I find that a very nice organizational system. That being said, you get that thing loaded up, there is a lot going on there. So to have a mode where you can just turn all the noise off and just get the essence is kind of nice. And like you said, if you're hiring people that are fresh to the software, it's a great way to go.
100%. Okay. So we wanted to give you guys a bit of a resource roundup. We've talked a lot about many of these so far. So for technical support, your value-added reseller for sure is a great resource to get to know. Maybe not always when things go wrong or things aren't going as expected, but just get to know them. They're super smart local resources to help you with all your SOLIDWORKS needs. Jesse and I actually used to work at resellers ourselves. Which is where we first learned, I think, a lot of these tips. So they're fully up on many of the things we've talked about today.
Yeah, and as you just said, we came from resellers, and I'm one of those people who I never get official training on anything. I just learn everything myself on YouTube, watching guys like us.
Yeah.
And I never call for help. But having worked at a reseller, I can vouch for the benefit of contacting your reseller, getting to know those guys, because they are there to be helpful. And I can say that basically across the board. Our reseller channel is amazing. So yeah, get to know those guys. They're super helpful. They take joy in solving problems. So if you run into something that's stumping you, give them a shout.
And then we also mentioned best practice guides. We mentioned on MySOLIDWORKS, MySOLIDWORKS.com, you log in, and then we have solid practice guides for installation, but not just installation. We also have ones for best practices when modeling in sheet metal, like all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, there's some specific ones in there.
It's really expansive. And then along that same line, we have the acronym here that we use, shorthand KB, the knowledge base. So if you're getting a message during installation, of course, once again, you can call your value-added reseller for assistance there, but you can also look up messages or different behaviors within the knowledge base. That's also findable within MySOLIDWORKS.com, and find different support articles that can help you through a jam or just give you more information about what you're seeing.
Yeah, I have a bunch of those bookmarked myself for things that I keep forgetting, and
that's a great tip. Yeah, just make a bookmark folder in your browser and keep a commonly looked at different articles.
Some of them are these install guides.
Yeah. For sure. And then what's new information? We talked about delivery day, of course. We will continue to make these episodes, giving you the latest and greatest, 15 to 20 different enhancements that we love the most that came out from the most recent release. So you can go to solidworks.com/delivery for the latest there. But also, and this episode's coming up next month, the first 2026 episode, SolidWorks 2026, right? So what's new, solidworks.com/what's new has all the latest info on the first big release of a given major version of software or SolidWorks software, as well as some of the previous releases as well. So some look backs, some catch up videos there. So these are some great resources when it comes to not only helping you install, but also if you have questions during the middle of the install, or you're looking at it and saying, okay, it's pragmatic to get ahead of end of life news for system requirements and that kind of thing, but what's new? What's some cool stuff I can do now that I couldn't do before? So yeah, these are some great resources. So we also have a special announcement. We have been installing SolidWorks, or mainly you guys have been installing SolidWorks for maybe 30 years?
Exactly 30 years, just about.
Yeah, it's the 30th anniversary, as we like to say around here, the 30th birthday of SolidWorks as of November of 2025. And we actually have created a special web experience for you to take in the past and the current and future of SolidWorks. So if you go to solidworks.com/30 years, that's 30 years, you can check out that web experience today. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching. We will see you next month for the premiere of the Vermeer.
Ooh, that's got a nice ring.
Yeah, I knew you would like that.
I like
so
that.
SolidWorks 2026 is upon us. We have our What's New, our annual What's New episode. We'll have tons of great guests, jam-packed and new enhancements. Can't wait. Looking forward to it. See you then.
See ya.